Welcome to Let's Talk Mental Health, where we bring awareness to the causes and solutions of mental health conditions. I'm your host, Nathan Nedley, and I've got Dr. Neil Nedley with me. Can you speak a little bit about the research that you've accomplished dealing with your community-run program, the 8-week program?
Yes, now this is a program that is now been run in, 24 countries now, 4 continents. Thousands of individuals, close to 10,000 individuals now have gone through. So it's a very large database. And in fact, it's a much larger database than anyone who's taken drugs before the drugs are released. And so when you compare it, for instance, with pharmaceuticals or other studies on depression, this is a very large, statistically validated database. And we have been able to determine the underlying causes of depression in these thousands of individuals based on a depression and anxiety assessment test. And so there are over 100 causes of depression, but they can be categorized into 10 different categories. And when there's 4 categories operative, our studies show that that is going to tip the patient over into depression and anxiety or another mental illness condition. And so that tells us the brain's pretty resilient. It can withstand, 1 or 2 causes, 3 causes, but once there's 4 different categories of causes, then that's when depression and anxiety comes about. And the solution, of course, is to reverse the causes that are reversible, and then we can actually eliminate mental illness, and we can talk about cure and not just control.
It's a more simplified way of looking at depression, but it's still very thorough. What are those 10 categories?
Okay, so genetics, developmental, which this has to do with maybe traumas in your upbringing, abuse, sexual abuse, those sorts of things. Addictions that you might have acquired will actually decrease mental health. Circadian rhythm, that has to do with sleep-wake cycles. Lifestyle, that has to do with things like physical exercise and getting enough fresh air and sunlight. Nutrition is a very important component in regards to mental health. Toxic causes, literal toxins like heavy metals, those sorts of things that can play a role in depression and anxiety. Social causes, medical causes, and then finally frontal lobe causes. These are things that are adversely affecting our circulation and activity of the most important part of the brain regarding mental health, and that's the frontal lobe.
So what does your research show as far as the ability to reduce or improve these categories over the span of 8 weeks in your program?
Amazingly, in just one time a week, educating people for 2 hours, which is what our program is based on. It's a mental health education program with a certified coach, coaching people through this process. And so once a week for 8 weeks, you would think, what's going to change in someone with depression and anxiety? But amazingly, a lot of people change once they are educated and coached to do so. And what surprised us at first when we did our research was that the area that produced the largest change was nutrition. And these are major nutritional changes that people have taken. A lot of people think, hey, depressed and anxious people aren't going to change the way they eat. Well, if you educate them in regards to what's going to help their mental health, they sure will. And 47%, about half of the individuals that went through our program, actually made such major nutritional changes that they didn't even qualify as having a nutrition hit at the end of the program. And so that was our category that improved the most. The second most I also wouldn't have predicted, and that was the frontal lobe. That improved the most. And of course, there's a lot of things that can produce frontal lobe hits. Lifestyle factors and the way we're thinking and those sorts of things. But we found out that well over a third of individuals actually totally eliminated their frontal lobe hit during those 8 weeks. And so they had changed their brain inputs enough to totally eradicate the frontal lobe hit. And then the third and fourth categories where about 1/4 completely eliminated those hits, are addiction hits. Who would have guessed that? Addictions are hard to give up. But our data shows that even though our program is a mental health program, you're actually more likely to give up your addiction during that 8 weeks than actually going to an addiction recovery program, because we're dealing with the mental health issues behind it. So addiction was number 3, and really tied for number 3 was circadian rhythm. That has to do with sleep-wake cycles and getting light. And so a large percentage of our patients were able to get rid of those 4 hits. And then, of course, there were other hits that also made a difference. About 20% were able to get rid of their lifestyle hit. In other words, they were exercising physically, getting enough fresh air, getting enough sunlight to completely eradicate that hit that they had during the 8 weeks. And then socially, we found out a lot of people were able to change positively for the social aspect. That was the 6th largest category, or the 6th category of being able to change. And then 7th, medical conditions. And so educating people about medical conditions that can adversely affect their mental health or can be reversed. And many people were able to eradicate their medical condition hit by controlling that aspect of things and thus improving their brain health. And then the 3 that were least likely to change were toxins, because it takes a while, more than 8 weeks often, to deal with the toxic part of things. And then, of course, genetic and developmental are already there. We can't change the gene, and we can't change your upbringing once you're an adult. But we can, of course, counsel you on how you can counteract some of those genetic defects and developmental issues, which the program also educates towards.
For some viewers who may be wondering, what exactly is a medical hit?
Yeah, medical hit are medical conditions that can adversely affect the brain, like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes. Even head trauma can be a medical condition that causes inflammation in the brain. Inflammatory diseases like autoimmune disease, and also hormonally based depression like postpartum depression or premenstrual tension syndrome. And so there's a whole number of conditions medically that can bring about depression. Hepatitis C is another one. And the amazing thing is the 7th category that was most likely to change, it's still not in the top 6, was actually enough control over that medical condition that it was no longer adversely affecting their brain.
Going back to what you said initially, if you're able to change or reduce just a few hits, you can eliminate depression, because of depression from the research that you've done only shows up most of the time in cases where a person has 4 hits or more. Is that correct?
That's right. So in other words, even if the person ends up having genetic, developmental, or toxic hits, but we're able to reverse those others, their depression and anxiety can be gone, because 3 hits is usually not enough to produce it. And so the good news is we don't have to get rid of all the hits. We just need to get rid of enough to get you down under that 4 category. And of course, if we're able to get rid of them all, I mean, the brain can be greatly optimized, and the sky's the limit as far as your future success.
Well, thanks for breaking down the research that you've done on mental health and depression. And thank you for watching. This is Let's Talk Mental Health. I'm your host, Nathan Nedley, and as always, stay healthy, live happy. For more information about our community-based programs, you can click on the link below to read how that program can be utilized in your own community. Thanks for watching.